The sky above Verix 9 was the color of frozen steel. Clouds hung heavy over the vast white plains, and the wind carried the sound of nothing. No birds, no machines, no voices, just silence. Beneath that silence, deep in the icy wilderness, something moved. Something small. Something alive. A baby dragon, no more than 3 feet long, lay trapped in a deep, frozen pond. Its green scales were dull and pale from the cold. Icy water reached up to its shoulders, and its wings were pressed tight against its thin body. The creature had fallen through the cracked ice days ago while chasing a shiny insect. It had cried out for help, but no one came. Now, its cries were weaker. The cold had taken most of its strength. It blinked slowly, trying to stay awake. Tiny claws scraped uselessly at the slippery ice. Its tail floated like a dead snake in the water. It was an alien dragon, native to this planet, but still young, still learning how to fly, still scared of shadows. It had wandered far from its nest, too far. And now it was stuck, cold, hungry, and alone. Time passed slowly. The stars changed above. Snow fell again and again, covering the pond and hiding the hole in the ice. Days blurred together. The dragon's heartbeat slowed, and still no one came. Until, far away, the sound of hoofbeats echoed across the ice. Jed Dust Marlowe rode a large, 4-legged beast called a crag horse. It had thick fur, strong legs, and one eye. It snorted steam with every breath. Jed sat tall in the saddle, wrapped in a long brown coat and wide-brimmed hat. A coil gun hung from his side, but his eyes were soft as they scanned the snowy horizon. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't even trying to be one. He was just looking for 2 lost herd bulls that had wandered off from his ranch. Jed guided his mount across a frozen ridge, letting instinct pull him toward the lowlands. Something felt wrong. The air smelled different. The wind had changed. His horse whined nervously. He dismounted and walked slowly across the snow, boots crunching. He didn't speak, didn't whistle. He was listening. The silence around him was ... wrong, and then he heard it. A faint sound, like a wet cough, or a soft cry. Jed turned, walked toward it. The sound came again, weak, but real. He saw the pond. At first it looked normal, frozen, still covered in light snow. But as he stepped closer, he noticed the crack. Then he saw the eyes. 2 glowing green eyes staring up from beneath the surface. Jed dropped to his knees and brushed away the snow. The creature beneath the ice moved barely. It blinked again, mouth twitching. Jed didn't panic. He didn't scream. He just stared for a moment. Then, slowly, he said, "Well now, what in the frozen hell are you?" The baby dragon blinked again, as if answering. Jed touched the ice. It was thick, strong, but not strong enough to keep. This creature alive much longer. He stood up straight and pulled a small heat rod from his pack. "Hang on, little guy," he muttered. "Ain't nobody dying on my watch today." The rod glowed red as he stabbed it into the ice. The baby dragon tried to move, but its limbs were stiff. Its body was too cold. But its eyes stayed on the man. Above the strange creature wearing a hat and a long coat, with a voice like thunder and hands warm as fire, and for the first time in days, the little dragon felt hope. The heat rod hissed as it melted the thick ice, steam rising and slow. Clouds around Jed Marlowe. He worked with quiet focus, cutting a circle around the trapped baby dragon. His gloves were thick, but the cold still bit through. The dragon blinked again, weaker now. Jed didn't know much about alien creatures. He was a cowboy, not a xenobiologist. But he knew the look of a dying animal, and this one was close. The rod finally cut through. With a grunt, Jed reached down and broke the loose chunk of ice, pushing it aside. Cold water splashed up. He leaned in and grabbed the little creature under its arms, lifting it slowly, carefully. It was lighter than it looked. Bones like a bird, cold as stone. "Easy now," Jed whispered, pulling the dragon free. "I got you." The dragon shivered. In his arms, letting out a weak wheeze. Its wings hung limp, tail trailing like a rope, but it didn't fight, it didn't bite, just let itself be held. Jed walked back to his crag horse and gently placed the dragon across the saddle. He wrapped it in a heated blanket from his emergency kit and tied it in place. "You're lucky, little fella," he said, mounting behind it. "If I'd come a day later, you'd be dragon cycle by now." The horse grunted, sensing the urgency, and started trotting back across the plains. The sky above was growing darker and clouds were rolling in again. Storm was coming. Jed looked up and narrowed his eyes. "Gotta beat the snow," he muttered. No time to waste. The journey back to Jed's outpost was long and cold. The wind grew stronger, howling across the ice like a ghost. Snowflakes danced through the air, hitting his face like tiny needles. But he didn't slow down. Every few minutes he looked back at the dragon. Its breathing was shallow but steady. Its eyes were closed now. Jed didn't talk much, but he hummed. A slow, low cowboy tune from Earth, something old and soft like a campfire song. The sound seemed to calm the creature. Hours later, lights appeared on the horizon, small towers glowing in the dark. Jed's outpost, a cluster of metal buildings, solar panels, and heat vents built into a cliffside. Smoke rose from the main chimney. Warmth waited inside. Jed reached the stable and dismounted. He scooped up the dragon again, holding it close to his chest. His arms ached from the ride, but he didn't complain. Kicked the door open and walked into the main room. Heat hit them both instantly. "Welcome home," Jed said softly. He laid the dragon on a soft padded mat near the fire generator. He unwrapped it from the blanket and pulled off his gloves. Then he got to work. Warm water, soft towels, nutrient paste, heat lamps. He didn't know what kind of food it needed, so he tried. A mix, protein milk, crushed fruit, a few drops of honey. The dragon didn't eat, but it licked the spoon once. That was a good sign. Jed stayed nearby all night. He sat in his old chair, boots off, watching the fire and the dragon. Bee! The storm outside roared like a beast, but inside the outpost, it was quiet. At one point, the baby dragon opened its eyes. It looked at Jed, then at the fire, then back at Jed. It made a tiny chirping sound, soft and confused. Jed smiled. "You're going to be all right, partner," he said. "Just hang in there." He didn't know what kind of trouble he had invited into his life. But for now, he just saw a scared little creature that needed help. And that was enough. The storm outside raged for 2 full days. Snow fell without rest, burying the landscape in white silence. Wind slapped against the windows of Yet's outpost like angry fists. But inside it was warm, safe. The baby dragon lay curled near the fire, covered in soft blankets and old towels. Its breathing had grown stronger. Its green scales were slowly turning bright again. Small sparks sometimes danced on its snout when it sneezed. Jed watched all this from his chair. He kept a journal open on his lap, jotting down notes. Day 2, he mumbled, pencil scratching on paper. Alien dragon is stable, eats a little, sleeps a lot. No aggression shown. Looked over at the creature. It was watching him, not moving, just staring, its big, curious eyes blinking slowly. "You got a name?" Jed asked, smiling. "No." "Well, I'll call you Ember." The dragon blinked again. Then very softly it chirped. Jed chuckled. Had good enough. By the 3rd day, the storm ended. The sky cleared, and pale sunlight fell over the icy plains. Jed stepped outside, his coat flapping in the wind. The snow was deep, at least 3 feet. His crag horse pawed at the ground, restless. He needed to check the area. That pond, it didn't feel right. He'd saved the dragon? Yes. But something still gnawed at the back of his mind. Why was it alone? Why hadn't anyone come looking for it? Jed geared up and left Ember sleeping near the heater. He whistled for the horse and rode out again, heading back toward the frozen pond. The land was quiet again. It's quiet. When Jed reached the pond, he stopped. Snow had filled the hole he had cut. But the air still felt heavy, like a breath held too long. He dismounted and walked to the edge of the ice. There were new scratches near the shore. deep grooves, like claws. Not from the baby. Bigger, much bigger. Jed knelt down and touched the marks. They were fresh. Maybe a day old. He looked up the nearby trees. Tall, black things with frozen bark had broken branches. Some were burned. Then he saw it. A piece of scale, shimmering gold, stuck on a broken branch. Bigger than his palm. Jed's jaw tightened. This wasn't just a lost baby, he muttered. This was a rescue gone wrong. Suddenly, a low sound echoed across the plains. Not a growl, not a scream. Song, deep and hollow, like a mountain crying. Jed froze. The sound came again, louder this time, far away. But not too far. He turned quickly and mounted his horse. "Let's go, boy," he said. "Something out there's still looking." Back at the outpost, Ember stirred in its sleep, twitched, letting out a soft whimper. Then it opened its eyes, glowing bright. Filled with fear, it heard the sound too. It knew the voice, and it knew what it meant. Its parents were calling, but they weren't just calling. They were searching, desperate, maybe even dangerous. Jed returned just before nightfall. He was cold, quiet, and thoughtful. He walked in, set his hat on the hook, and knelt beside Ember. "You heard that, didn't you?" said softly. Ember looked up, eyes wide. Jed nodded. "How's your folks?" "Wasn't it?" The dragon chirped once, low and sad. Jed scratched his beard.
"Oh, we're in it now, partnall."
He looked out the window, where the snow glowed under a red moon. "They're coming," he whispered, "and I ain't sure if they're cumin'. For you, or for me." The red moon rose higher in the night sky, casting a soft glow over the snowy world of Virix 9. Inside the outpost, Jed Marlowe stood near the window, watching the frozen plains. His hand rested on the grip of his coil gun, but he hadn't drawn it yet. Behind him, Ember slept, though not peacefully. The little dragon twitched in its sleep, whimpering like a scared pup. Jed had seen that kind of sleep before. Soldiers called it ghost rest when the body sleeps, but the mind stays trapped in fear. Jed turned from the window and knelt beside Ember. He placed a gentle hand on its head. "They're getting close," he said softly. "I can feel it in my bones." The dragon opened one eye. It glowed green in the dim light. Jed smiled. "You just hold on. I ain't letting nobody take you without talking first." An hour later it began. The ground trembled, soft at first, then stronger. Dust fell from the ceiling. Tools on the walls clattered. A crag horse in the stable kicked and neighed wildly. Jed grabbed his coat, strapped his coil gun, and opened the front door. The cold hit his face like a slap. But what he saw made him forget the cold. A shape was coming through the snowstorm. No, not one. Two shapes, massive, winged glowing eyes like lanterns, moving fast, dragons, adult dragons. Jed stepped forward slowly. He raised his empty hand. "Palm out, I ain't here to fight," he called out. "I got your baby. Safe." The two dragons landed with a sound like thunder, snow flying in every direction. They were giants, each the size of a transport truck. One had golden scales, the other deep blue. Their eyes locked onto Jed. Jed didn't flinch, stood his ground. "Easy now," he said. "Y'all don't want to do nothin' stupid." The golden one stepped closer, teeth bared. Steam hissed from its nostrils. A deep sound rumbled in its throat. Not a growl, but something older. A language. Jed didn't understand it, but Ember did. Inside the outpost, the baby dragon stirred, and it sat up, wings twitching. Its eyes were wide with recognition. It let out a loud, echoing chirp, strong, full of feeling. The adult dragons froze. Jed turned and looked back toward the door. "That you, little Ember?" Ember ran out, stumbling at first, then leaped into the snow. It chirped again, this time louder, wings fluttering. The golden dragon let out a roar, not angry, joyful. It rushed forward and lowered its head. Ember climbed up, nuzzling against its giant face. Jed slowly lowered his hand. "Well, I'll be." The blue dragon approached next. It leaned down and checked Ember for wounds. It sniffed Jed too, close enough that its breath warmed his face. Jed didn't move. "I pulled your kid out of the ice," he said quietly. "Did what anyone decent would have done." The dragons looked at him. Then something strange happened. The golden one touched its massive claw to the snow, then raised it and slowly bowed its head. Jed's eyes widened.
Ats.
Was that a thank you?
Ats.
The blue one let out a low hum, not quite music, not quite speech, and nodded. Jed tipped his hat. "You're welcome." Ember looked back at Jed once more. It chirped softly, almost sadly, then it climbed up between its parents. The three dragons rose into the sky together, wings beating strong. Snow swirled in their wake. Within seconds, they disappeared into the dark clouds. Jed stood alone. Again, silence returned to the plains. But something had changed. That night, as Jed sat by the fire, sipping hot synth coffee, he wrote in his journal, "Saved an alien dragon. Met its folks, didn't die. Might be the weirdest day of my life." He paused, then added one more line. "Hope that little one remembers me." 3 days passed. Jed Marlowe went back to his usual work, fixing fences, feeding the herd bulls, cleaning solar panels. Life on the frontier was never quiet for long, even after saving an alien baby dragon. But his heart wasn't fully in it. Every time he passed by the fire mat near the heater, he paused. That's where Ember used to sleep. That small space now looked empty, like something important was missing. He missed the soft chirps, the way Ember tilted his head, the tiny sparks that came out when it sneezed. Jed had saved the little dragon. But the truth was, Ember had touched something inside him too. One cold morning, just before dawn, Jed heard something strange. Not the wind, not an animal. It was tapping. He got out of bed, pulled on his boots, and opened the front door there, standing in the snow. Was Ember alive, healthy, bigger than before? And he wasn't alone. Behind him sat a basket made of vines and metal. Inside it, a glass bottle full of glowing white liquid. Alien milk, warm and steaming. Jed blinked. "Well, I'll be." Ember chirped and ran toward him, jumping into his arms. Jed laughed and almost fell back. "You crazy little lizard," he said. "You came back." Ember snuggled into his coat, making happy clicking sounds. Jed looked at the basket. "That from your folks?" The baby dragon nodded. Jed picked it up and took Ember inside. Inside, the fire was already low. Jed threw on some extra wood, then placed the bottle near the flame to keep it warm. He sat on the floor, Ember on his lap, both staring into the fire. "You grew a bit," Jed said. "Those wings are longer, stronger." Ember lifted one proudly. Jed smiled. "Your parents must have trained you some, huh?" The dragon nodded again, eyes glowing softly. Jed opened the bottle and sniffed. The milk smelled sweet, like vanilla, and firewood. He poured some into a bowl and placed it in front of Ember. The little dragon drank eagerly, tail wagging behind. Jed watched with quiet joy. The days that followed were peaceful. Every morning, Ember brought another gift, a fruit that glowed, smooth rock shaped like a star, even a small pouch of rare crystals. Jed didn't know what to do with most of them, but he kept them all. In a box labeled, "From Ember," they spent time together. Jed would work outside while Ember followed him like a loyal pup. Sometimes the dragon would try to help, burning away frozen bolts with tiny fire breath or flying ahead to scout the herd at night. They sat by the fire sharing stories, or at least Jed did. Ember listened with wide eyes, chirping at the funny parts. Jed talked about Earth, about the deserts and horses and long trails, about wars he fought, friends he lost, and the quiet he now lived in. "You know," he said one night, "I thought I came to this planet to get away from people." He looked down at Ember. "But maybe I came here to find you." The dragon purred and curled closer. One evening, something new happened. While Ember slept beside him, Jed heard a whisper, not out loud, but inside his head. "Jed, protector, friend." He sat up straight, heart pounding. Ember was still, asleep, but its forehead glowed faintly. "Thank you," the voice said again, softer now. "We see you. We remember." Jed swallowed hard. It wasn't just Ember. The parents were speaking to him. Telepathically, from far away, he stared into the fire. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. In his journal, he wrote that night. Ember came back, brought milk and magic. I don't know what this bond is, but it's real. Maybe I didn't just save him. Maybe he saved me too. It was a quiet afternoon on Varex 9. The sky was clear. The wind was calm. And Ember was playing near the stable, chasing snowflakes and flapping his wings in excitement. Jed Marlowe sat on an old crate, oiling his coil gun. He smiled as he watched Ember spin and tumble across the snow. Careful, he called out. You ain't a full-size dragon yet. Ember chirped proudly and tried to fly higher. He hovered a few feet, then fell into a soft pile of snow. Jed chuckled. One day, partner, you'll be gliding over mountains. But deep inside, Jed had a strange feeling, a tightness in his chest. Something wasn't right. Then the warning. Alarm buzzed. BZZZZZZT. Incoming object detected. Unregistered ship entering airspace. Jed stood up fast. That ain't normal. Ran inside and checked the screen. A red dot blinked near his zone. Small ship. Fast. No. ID code. Could be smugglers, he muttered. Or worse, Ember had followed him in, sensing the tension. His wings twitched, and he growled softly. Jed loaded his coil gun and grabbed a pair of binoculars. Stay close, Ember. This might get messy. Minutes later, a sleek black ship appeared in the sky, heading toward the outpost. It wasn't from the human colony. It wasn't from the dragons either. It was something else. The ship landed hard, kicking up a storm of snow. The back hatch opened. With a hiss, and 3 figures stepped out. They wore black armor, smooth helmets, and carried strange weapons. Their suits had no markings, no flags, no names. Jed stepped outside, his gun lowered but ready. One of the soldiers raised a hand. You are Jed Marlowe. Jed nodded slowly. Who's askin'? The soldier didn't answer the question. We received a signal from this location. A rare energy signature. High heat radiation mixed with unknown bioelectric patterns. Jed stayed silent. The soldier continued. That signal matches the presence of a rare species. Alien, reptilian, small, possibly valuable. Jed's jaw tightened. Ain't nothin' for sale here. The soldier tilted his head. We're not here to buy. We're here to take. That's when Ember stepped out from behind the wall, standing between Jed and the soldiers. His eyes glowed bright, and a faint flame flickered from his nostrils. The soldiers raised their weapons. Jed moved fast. He fired his coil gun at the ground near their feet boom. Snow exploded upward, blinding them for a moment. Get back inside, Ember, he shouted. The baby dragon didn't move. Instead, he let out a high-pitched roar. It wasn't loud, but it was powerful, the kind of sound that echoed through bones and metal suddenly. The sky rumbled. All eyes turned upward. 2 shadows passed over the outpost. Huge shadows. Then the dragons came. Ember's parents' gold, and blue swooped down from the sky like thunderbirds. Their wings tore through clouds. Their eyes burned like suns. The soldiers froze. Jed lowered his weapon. Told you he had, folks. The golden dragon landed hard, blocking the soldiers' path. The blue one followed, growling deep and low. One soldier tried to raise his weapon. Bad idea. The blue dragon opened its mouth and fired a beam of flame-controlled, precise, just enough to melt the soldier's weapon in his hand. He screamed and dropped it, stumbling back. The other 2 didn't even try. They dropped their weapons and fell to their knees. The golden dragon stepped closer, its massive head only inches from the soldier's helmet. A low hum filled the air. Telepathy. Jed heard it in his mind. Do not touch our child again. The soldiers got the message. They ran back to their ship and left without another word. Later that night, Jed sat by the fire, Ember curled beside him. Well, he said, guess word's out now. Ember chirped, looking proud. Jed scratched his head. We're gonna have more visitors soon. some good, some bad. He looked down at the little dragon. But whatever comes, we face it together. A week had passed since the soldiers came and left. Since then, no more strangers showed up, no more threats from the sky, just silence. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This silence had peace in it. Respect. New kind of understanding, Jed. Marlowe stood on the edge of a snowy cliff. Looking out at the plains of Varix 9, Ember sat beside him. Wings spread, eyes glowing like emerald fire. The baby dragon had grown fast. He was now the size of a full-grown dog, his wings strong enough to glide short distances. He could shoot controlled sparks, and even start the fire pit with just one breath. And most of all, he was no longer afraid. Word had spread through the local colonies. The story was told again and again. A lone human cowboy who saved an alien baby dragon, faced down soldiers, befriended ancient beasts, and walked away alive. Some didn't believe it. Some thought it was a fairy tale. But those who had seen the dragons fly overhead, those who saw the burned weapons left behind, they knew Dust Marlowe had done something no one else ever had. One evening, a small group of human settlers rode up to Jed's outpost. They brought gifts, food, tools, and warm clothing. Not many people could have done what you did. One of them said Jed just smiled and tipped his hat. Didn't do it for fame. Another settler looked at Ember, who chirped happily and flew in a circle. "Is it safe?" she asked, nervous. Jed looked at Ember. "Safe as long as you are." Settlers stayed for a meal. Ember watched them carefully, but didn't hide. He even let a child feed him a dried fruit from their pack. It was a good night the next morning. Jed stood near the stable, watching the horizon. Ember sat on his shoulder, tail wrapped around his neck like a scarf. In the distance, something shimmered in the sky, a shape, fast, smooth, shining gold. The dragons were back. Ember chirped loudly and leaped into the air. He flew clumsily toward the sky as the two massive dragons descended. Wings wide, eyes proud, they landed near the cliff where Ember was born, the place where he had fallen through the ice. Ember landed beside them. The golden dragon lowered its head and gently touched Ember's snout. Then it looked at Jed not with anger, not with warning, but with something almost human gratitude. Once again, Jed felt that deep, silent voice inside his mind. "He is strong now, because of you." Jed nodded. "He's got a good heart. Must learn more. He will fly with us, but he will return." Jed's chest tightened. He knew what that meant. It was time. Ember turned and looked at Jed. He let out a soft chirp, not sad, full of feeling. Jed walked forward, knelt down, and placed a hand on the dragon's head. "You go on now, learn what you gotta. But don't forget your old man here, all right?" Ember pressed his head into Jed's chest for a long second. Then, with one great push, he flew upward, stronger than ever before. The three dragons rose into the sky together, wings shining under the pale sun, and then they were gone, back at the outpost. Jed sat alone by the fire. He poured himself a cup of synth coffee and opened his journal one last time. He's gone to fly with his kind. But I reckon he'll be back. When he's ready, and when the stars need him most. Until then, I'll be right here, watching. The skies. Outside, snow began to fall again, and the legend of Dust Marlowe, the cowboy who saved a dragon, lived on. The end.